On today's episode of Game on Garage, we finally start working on the white wagon. As you can see, things took quite a turn, for the better or worse, who knows. So the plan for today is to replace these CV boots. I'm only doing the outers as the inners are still fine. How to know when it's time to replace these? Well, you'll see that the CV boots on the car will be split and there's a lot of grease leaking out of it. If all the grease leaks out, then there's no more lubrication. We've got metal and metal, and your half shafts will be start wearing fairly soon, especially at the CV joints, of course. But since everyone doesn't check underneath their car every day or every weekend, the way I knew this is becoming a problem is the smell. So as we drive around, we've got a tear in the boot and the grease flicks everywhere due to centrifugal force. That means we've got this grease all over the car, on the hot engine, hot transmission, and especially the hot exhaust. Now this might be a fire hazard in a worst case scenario, but just the smell was enough reason to get this fixed, of course. So there we can see the split boot with the grease all leaking out. Obviously everything in here is dirty, so it's a good idea to start off by wiping everything clean. Now there are two ways to get the boot off. Obviously you can just cut it off, but then you won't be able to get the new one on. So we'll have to remove the half shaft from the hub so that we can slide the new boot on there. Two ways to get to it. Most of the internet will tell you to just undo these two 19mm. Just keep in mind that this top one does control your camber, so you'll probably have to go for a wheel alignment after this. Might be a good idea to just mark its rotation so you just have a reference of the camber, so you can at least get to the wheel alignment shop. The other option is doing the ball joint at the bottom, although that seems a bit more difficult. So I'm just going to remove these top nuts and then we should be able to slide it out. With those two removed, we can slide this out. Careful for tension on both your, I'm guessing, ABS sensor and your brake line. So to slide out the half shaft or the axle, we'll have to remove the 32mm nut over here. Maybe a good idea to start with that. It's a bit difficult with the car in the air, but if you're able to get someone to press on the brakes, it's very possible to remove 32mm, and then we punch on here to get the axle out. So maybe just a rubber mallet, not to damage anything. And there we go. We've got it out. Alright, so as you can see, things took quite a turn, for the better or worse, who knows. I took the whole drive shaft, axle shaft, half shaft out. That's because I wasn't able to separate the shaft from the actual CV joint we've got over here. Supposedly the CV joint should just pull off or smack off. That wasn't able to work for me, so what I ended up doing was removing the whole shaft. There's a pin, you can see the hole there, that you have to knock out using a 4 or 5mm punch right next to the gearbox, and then this whole assembly slides out. Then you can move back the boot, and there's a snap ring inside this green cup you see. Then you're able to remove the cup from everything. Then there's another snap ring on the end of the shaft. Right on the end of the shaft, another snap ring that you have to remove, and then the bearings, knuckles slides off. Then I can remove this boot. Well, remove, or I just actually cut off the old boot, but put the new boot back on, clamp that back on, and then just reversal. Boot, knuckles, snap ring on the edge, then new grease inside the green cup, and then snap ring from this side. Made that all tight, and now it's time to go back in, and then I'll give you some more tips after we're done with that. Okay, so I'm somewhat cleaner, and finally we're done. Just need to tighten the bolts, but I just like to clean everything before we get to that. Some things that I'd like to point out, everyone who's going to attempt this on their own. Like I mentioned, you have to mark the camber bolt. Just make sure that you mark the bolt side and not the nut side, so that you know which direction, let's say like a clock from 12 all the way back to 12 again, the bolt has to be, just as a reference. So that's the top one on the Subarus, and make sure you mark the bolt side, not the nut side. Also remember to retighten the axle nut, but we'll only do that once either the car's on the ground or I got someone to step on the brakes again. Also, once you're placing the axle back into the transmission, remember to line up the holes where we punched out that pin so you can get the pin back in. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's not impossible. Make sure you've got some time on your hands. Also, over here we've got our disposable cloth towels and paper towels. It really is a dirty job, so make sure you've got some time to clean up afterwards and that you've got some paper towels close by. But yeah, like I mentioned, not impossible, definitely doable. Either if you have to replace your axles, replace the boots, or replace the CV joints. Lastly, it's not entirely necessary to strip the car all the way down to what you see over here. This is because I'm busy with something else where we will be doing some rust prevention, something that's free that you can do to prevent rust on your cars, especially from the 80s, 90s or thereabout. But stay tuned for that episode. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. If you like this and you'll feel confident now to tackle your own car, maybe give us a thumbs up. But in the meantime, remember, it's not game over, it's game on.